he thought that there was an energetic component of like, well, maybe your energy, you're leveling up and you're literally breaking through to the next level. So we were just like, okay, yeah, let's roll with that. And we made it into a positive thing. So yes, obstacles happen to all of us. It's just you have to decide how you're going to go about it afterwards.
I love that. You literally broke a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example of what to do when something bad happens, right? How do we reframe this? Often, when something happens, an obstacle faces, we go, why did this happen to me? But maybe it's, why did this happen for me? Right? What have you now gained by this loss? And so an obstacle is just that. It's a redirecting. We talked a little bit about redirecting when we were talking about business. And so Bruce Lee, he always says, do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. We don't want to pray to be weak and for things to be easy. We want to be strong. And how do we gain strength? By resistance. For anyone who has ever lifted weights, it is actually through the tearing of the muscle, the breaking down of the muscle that allows you to build it up stronger. So when something bad happens, you're faced with an obstacle, the journey looks different. Instead of looking at life that all these bad things are happening, actually, how are you being broken down so that you can be built up stronger? Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero, you are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Britannia Stowe, joined by my sister and co-host, Annika Wilder. Enjoy the show.
As we were talking about motivation through all the motivation series this week or this month, I I get a question all the time from coaching clients, and it's, well, how do you stay motivated when something bad happens? Like when something beyond your control happens in your life, how do you get back on track?
Yeah, I get that question too when I'm coaching people. And I say, let's first visit some people, real life, real stories who have been completely derailed. There's a couple of famous examples that we'll throw out there. Aron Ralston. He is the famous 127 hours guy. If you haven't seen that movie, it is fantastic. But he is, famous for going hiking, falling, getting stuck. And the only way out is he has to amputate his own arm. Crazy. Another great example is the Soul Surfer, great movie about this surfer, Bethany Hamilton, that at the age of 12 or 13 lost her arm in a shark attack and quickly got back on her board and became this fantastic world known surfer and made a movie about her life. One other person that I didn't know until I started to do a little bit more research that you just assumed had their life together, always had their life together, never has been derailed, is Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey is known as the money guy. He, people come to him, he has all these books and podcasts and programs to help people get out of debt and have financial success. But did you know that there was a time when he had this huge amount of wealth in real estate and he lost it all, completely bankrupt, lost everything, and he had to rebuild from ground zero. And now he's known as this financial guru. So when we talk about when something bad happens, we often think that that's the end of the story, right? The journey ends. And we get this, outlook because obstacles that show up in our life, it kind of happens in a way that we don't expect, right? The journey looks a little bit different. Annika, do you know of any other examples, real life stories from maybe your life, or any other famous examples of people who have been faced with an obstacle and that wasn't the end of the story?
Well, I think if life didn't have obstacles, it probably wouldn't be life.
Yeah.
This part of it's part of life. It's part of the journey, and it can be really tough. I mean, just a couple years ago, we were $30,000 in debt, like credit card debt. That doesn't include the other $50,000 of student loan debt. This was $30,000 of credit card debt. We had no money. We had one car that barely worked, and I'm driving the kids home from school in this one car, a minivan, an old minivan, and the sunroof spontaneously combusts on the freeway. I'm going 80 miles an hour, and the sunroof just shatters and it explodes. It makes a loud noise. Glass is everywhere in my hair. It's all on the kids in the back seat. And I'm going, oh my gosh. And the kids are going, what's wrong? And I pull over and I'm like, okay, are we under attack? Like, what is going on? And I'm looking around and I see no other cars are affected. Nothing else is coming from the sky. And I'm like, are you guys okay? I'm okay. I think the sunroof just spontaneously combusted. And Dan and I mean, I called Dan all frantic, like, oh my gosh, I'm so freaked out. I've got glass in my hair and this could have been so scary. And bad things happen to us all the time. And then we started having this conversation because this is something that we're in the habit of that I hope we talk about is taking the obstacle and turning it into a lesson or turning it into a good thing. And we joked that me climbing up the corporate ladder as a marketer, and then eventually I was on my way to become my own business owner. I was shattering glass ceilings, that I was leveling up. And he thought, because when you look at the glass, it broke like this, like it broke outward. It didn't break inward, like a rock didn't hit it and it broke inward, it broke out. And so he thought that there was an energetic component of like, well, maybe your energy, you're leveling up and you're literally breaking through to the next level. So we were just like, okay, yeah, let's roll with that. And we made it into a positive thing. So yes, obstacles happen to all of us. It's just you have to decide how you're going to go about it afterwards.
I love that you literally broke a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example of what to do when something bad happens, right? How do we reframe this? Often, when something happens, an obstacle faces, we go, why did this happen to me? But maybe it's, why did this happen for me? Right? What have you now gained by this loss? And so an obstacle is just that. It's a redirecting. We talked a little bit about redirecting when we were talking about business. And so Bruce Lee, he always says, do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. We don't want to pray to be weak and for things to be easy. We want to be strong. And how do we gain strength? By resistance. For anyone who has ever lifted weights, it is actually through the tearing of the muscle, the breaking down of the muscle that allows you to build it up stronger. So when something bad happens, you're faced with an obstacle, the journey looks different. Instead of looking at life that all these bad things are happening, actually, how are you being broken down so that you can be built up stronger? Now, I will say that there are some ways that we can invite some of this energy that derails our motivation. And so I would like to talk about that a little bit. What are some motivation killers that can really slow us down? And we talked about the difference between motivation and discipline. So I wouldn't just call this a motivation killer, but even discipline killers. What sucks our energy? And some of those include overwhelm, right? So it's having too many choices and not enough clarity, and often being paralyzed in that moment. Comparison, we're measuring ourselves way too much against other people. Or again, we talked about the gap in the gain, where we think we should be versus where we actually are. And then, of course, burnout. So we often think that we can go, hustle, hustle, hustle. And when we don't hustle, when we're not going 100 miles per hour, we think we're not accomplishing anything, but actually rest is incredibly important. So if you are not resting and balancing your full speed ahead with some quiet time, with some downtime, you're gonna burn out. And discipline and motivation are not going to serve you if you're overwhelmed, you're comparing, and you're burning yourself out.
I think you said recently, whether it was off camera or on camera, you said getting rest is discipline. And it reminds me of when I first had my first child, Anders, and I refused to take naps. I refused to sleep. I had postpartum depression. I was super overwhelmed. I had no motivation. I literally would hold him on my chest while he slept, and I would just watch shows like all day. And I was a zombie. I like now looking back, I was like, why would I do that? Like I should have slept, but because I wasn't sleeping at night because he was nursing all night. I wasn't sleeping during the day because of my stubbornness of having to be awake. I lost my mind. I feel like I lost some years of valuable time with my son where I could have built a business or bettered myself. I was literally a zombie. I didn't have the discipline to just rest, and it's okay to rest, and there's time where we need to rest, and sometimes we have to coach ourselves like get in bed, listen to your body. It's okay, and have the discipline enough to rest when you actually need it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I experienced that even yesterday. I wanted to work on my book, I wanted to work on the podcast, doing some editing and prep work. And I felt tired, not just mentally, but physically. And I had this moment where I was sitting in the kitchen where my bedroom is to the right and my nursery slash office slash library is to the left. So I'm literally in the center. And I go, okay, I want to work on my book. And I know that I can do things tired, right? I can do it anyways. But I also know I haven't taken a day off and I've worked until 9 p.m. every night. And I have an early day tomorrow. If I were to rest, would that set me back or will that actually help propel me forward? And I sat in this moment in reflection for probably only about 5 seconds. And I said, no, you need to rest. And I walked into the bedroom and I changed my clothes and I went to bed early. And today we've gotten so much done. We've been so productive today. And so, yes, rest is a part of discipline. And so when we are looking at the bad things that are happening in our lives, there are some things that you can do. And one of my favorite things to do is to ask yourself, right? Journal about when something bad happens. So, say you broke the glass ceiling on your car, right? Literally shattered the glass ceiling. But in that moment, you didn't know it was a good thing. You write it down. And then you write down maybe some feelings that you're feeling scared, confused, uncertain, and leave some space on the paper to come back. And then in about a month, and you can do this if you do quarterly inventory or monthly inventory, in about a month, come back and write what you have learned from that experience. You said after the fact, you had talked with your husband about how energetically you may have shattered this because you've actually leveled up as a person. So, what have you learned? That not everything that happens unexpectedly or spontaneously is a bad thing, right? What else did you learn from that experience?
That sunroof spontaneously combust sometimes.
Right. And that not every bad thing is a bad thing.
Right.
It's a good thing. And so sometimes you notice that after 1 month, but you could even come back after 2 months and go, how was this bad thing that I was so certain was bad in the moment? How was it actually a good thing? And by doing that exercise, a couple of things happen. One, it makes you conscious that life ebbs and flows, there are ups and downs, but also our perception in the moment is not the definition of the experience. So our perception changes, our emotions change. And in that moment, it may have seemed like an awful thing, but really, with some perception, with some time, you can look back and realize this was a good thing. And what came out of it was XYZ, or what I learned from it was. And so these are some of the things that you can do when something bad happens. I think it's also important to mention that things don't go the way you want. And so if you are aware that things aren't going to go the way you want, expecting a hurdle, expecting the struggle, you don't have to carry a Mary Poppins bag full of things that you think will solve the problem. You just need to be emotionally and spiritually prepared for the unexpected. Here I am about to give birth to my first child, and I'm writing my birth plan. And my teacher in my birthing class said, let's not talk about a plan. Let's call it a preference because things are not going to go according to plan. And you need to be aware that things can go awry. And they actually spent some time in the birthing class talking about what could go wrong, not to scare you, but to make you aware that things don't always go according to plan. So remember that. That's really important. Remember that you're building resilience when something happens and a new skill set to make yourself stronger. Anything else that you want to, throw out that can help prepare people for the unexpected?
I think you're hitting on all of it. I think what comes to my mind is Marie Forleo says, make isness your business. And if you just allow what is, it just is, and maybe it's not negative or positive. Maybe it just is like just stuff just happens sometimes. And the more we worry about it and the more we put a negative connotation on it, the more we attract that type of behavior, the more it slows you down. It's something I tell my kids all the time. Whining slows you down because they're like, oh, I didn't want this, or she got the blue cup and I wanted the blue cup. And it's like, oh my gosh, like whining slows you down. I repeat this all the time. If you're going to whine about it, like how productive is that? Are we getting any change? No. Are you feeling good when you whine? No. Like it's not helpful. And so it takes a lot of discipline to overcome that because everybody has an initial reaction to the bad thing that happens. You have an emotional response. So it takes discipline and practice to stop and be like, okay, how am I going to handle this? Maybe I need some time to feel my emotions, and then I'm going to set a time for me to get out of it. Or maybe I'm just going to decide right now, I'm not going to whine. Make isness your business. It just is. Whatever. Move on to the next thing. Don't waste time anymore.
Yeah, you definitely detach that meaning sometimes, right? We are so quick to go, what does that mean? Is this good? Is this bad? Sometimes it just is. And giving your space to feel that. I would also add that looking back at your life, if there is a time that something awful happened, look at where you are today, knowing that that moment may have been a redefining moment in your life. And often every obstacle is actually an opportunity. And we keep asking, right, for this growth. We keep asking for opportunities to be better, but you don't just magically get better. You are faced with a challenge, an obstacle, or an opportunity. And it is how you choose to show up when no one is looking that tests your character, that builds the skill set so that you are changed, so you have evolved, so you are stronger. So remember when something quote unquote bad happens, it may have been the very thing you've been praying for. This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself. Take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.